Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Hi everyone, my name is Singh. So basically today, in today's video, there's a concept that's very divisive within the Sikh faith, and I wanted to explore it because it's come up recently, and that's the concept of the divine feminine, you might call it, or as we might call it, the praising of the goddess. And this is something that's very controversial because some people believe in this concept that in the Sikh faith there's this divine goddess, and then some people think that it's not true and that it's been basically imported into the Sikh faith from other traditions, either by mistake or in a very insidious way to undermine the religious beliefs of the Sikh faith. So this is something that I really was interested in. And so, as you know, with this video series, this is not a place where you come to look for answers. Instead, this is me exploring my faith, my tradition, trying to learn and stumble and make mistakes, and I invite you to come along with me. So this was something that I was very interested in, and I started doing a little bit of research, and I'm going to share that research with you. By no means, as I've said many times before, am I an expert? I'm just somebody that feels like a lot of times the literature in the Sikh faith or trying to explore philosophies in general can be very intimidating. So I've taken the initiative, Gopprasad, to try to learn more, and I'm welcoming you on that journey. So we're going to talk about what we call Devi Ustat, or praising the divine goddess. And what does it mean exactly? Is this some people will say, well, we're a monotheistic faith, but now we're introducing these different, these demigods. Is that really what it is, or is there something deeper there? So I'm going to share with you a passage that I came across. I'm going to share with you a number of passages, but this passage is from a compilation that's not very well known. And for those who do know it, it's very misunderstood. So this is called Sarabloh Granth Sahib, and in brackets you'll see it's a city Manglacharan. So we're going to talk a little bit about Sarabloh Granth Sahib. So Siri Sarabloh Granth Sahib, I'm just going to give you a brief introduction on how it starts, but this video is just an introduction. It's basically part one to this concept of the Devi, or the divine feminine. And then the concepts and ideas and sources that I introduce here, later on Gopprasad will go into them each individually in more detail. Again, we're learning and we're trying our best, right? So Siri Sarabloh Granth Sahib is considered Guru Gobind Singh's poetry. So for those who are kind of new to the Sikh tradition, or the Sikh tradition, sometimes as it's called in the West, the Sikh faith has 10 physical gurus or teachers, and then the 11th is our scriptures, what we call Guru Granth Sahib. And then pre-colonial Sikh thought, there's other scriptures, Dasam Granth Sahib and Sarabloh Granth Sahib. And a lot of people, there's a lot of controversy around these two scriptures in particular, but we're not going to really go into that controversy. We're just going to explore the philosophies and some of the writings here. So as I've said before, this is called the Sampurna Stik. So basically what it is it has the writing, the poetry, then it has translations, like it has word for word translations, and then it has commentaries. So a lot of times in Eastern tradition, especially the Sikh faith, if you don't know the context of what's being said, then you can misinterpret it. So it's very important to learn through a stik by a reputable scholar. And I guess that can be ambiguous. What does a reputable scholar mean, right? But it's important to try to get the meanings. So Siri Sarabloh Granth Sahib, it starts with Ik Oankar, right? And the first section here is dedicated to what is the meaning of the word ik, right? So here, and also, as I mentioned before, so I grew up in the West, And I'm trying to improve my ability to read the Gurmukhi script. I'm trying to improve my ability to understand Punjabi. But the hope is that as you see me stumble along, try my best, perhaps make mistakes, mispronunciations, many of you who are in the same situation will kind of have the inclination to perhaps start on your own journey. And you'll see that it's okay to make mistakes as long as you have a good heart and good intentions. And over time, you just get better. And I mean, that's my hope. Over time, I'll get better. So, ik oankar, we're just going to touch on it very slightly. It just says ik, so that means basically one. Ik path Shri Guru Nanak Dev Ji di rachna to bina kise vi hor granth cho nahi milta. So basically, it's basically this whole section, and I'm not going to read all of it, but it basically says Shri Guru Nanak Dev Ji di hi rachna hai. I skipped over some parts here, but it's basically saying this is Guru Nanak, the first Sikh Guru's poetry, or like creation, writing. And then it goes into the meaning of Oankar. So it says Oankar, Parameswar, the Naam, right? So Naam, a very complicated subject. People translate it as name. That's the technical, I guess that's the direct translation, but it means so much more. But again, we're not going to explore that in this video. Perhaps we'll put aside like another video. But it basically means it's God's or the creator's identity or name. Okay, so that's how it starts, and there's a whole explanation from Sri Sarabloh Granth Sahib, right? Then it goes into Sri Vaheguru Ji Ki Fatah, which is pronounced a little bit different than a lot of people are accustomed to. So here it says, and it explains that, it goes Sri Guru Gobind Singh Sahib Ji, so Guru Gobind Singh, the 10th of the Sikh Gurus, Sri Guru Gobind Singh Sahib Ji di rachna ਅਤੇ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਪੈਰੋਕਾਰਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਰਚਨਾਵਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਹੈ. Shabad milta hai. So basically, it's basically saying there's three essential variations of this term, Sri Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So Sri Vaheguru Ji Ki Fatah, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh, Te Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh hai. Right? And it basically says, Eho Jangi Nara hai. It's a battle cry. It's like something that you would say in battle, right? And then it goes on and explains more of that. Now what's interesting is later on, it says Sri Man Pandit Ishwar Singh Ji Nirbale ne Guru Mantrat Naam di Sanskrit Pustak vich Vaheguru Mantra de 500 arth likhe han. So basically this Vaheguru, this word Vaheguru, which is very famous in the Sikh faith, and people are always trying to define it. It's basically, there's a book by Pandit Ishwar Singh. Pandit, also, people are already getting triggered. They hear the word Pandit and they're like, why are you using that when you're talking about the Sikh faith? Pandit essentially just means someone who's an expert in their field, or they're very well researched and very well studied, and they're just very good at what they do. And you hear this term used in the Hindu faith for people who are scholars there. You hear it in South Asian musical tradition, where experts in certain musical traditions are called Pandit. And then you hear it in pre-colonial Sikh times, not so much these days, but previously you would hear it with a lot of Sikh scholars as well. It just means somebody who's an expert. So sometimes what we do is we have preconceived notions about what a word means, and we hear that word and then we get upset. And this is what this entire video is about. So we're going to go into some of the words that make people upset. So basically it says, like, there's a book, and Ishwar Singh is basically came up with 500 meanings of the word Vaheguru. Okay, now we're going to get into where people really take exception. So up to this point, nobody's going to take exception to what we've mentioned here, Sri Vaheguru Ji Fatah. Then after that, it says Sri Bhavani Ji Sahai, Sri Maya Lachmi Ji Sahai. Okay, so Sahai essentially means help. So here, the text is basically saying the respected Bhavani's help and the respected Maya Lachmi's help, basically asking for help. Now, these two names, Bhavani and Maya Lachmi, are generally, they're associated with demi-goddesses. That's what people think of when they hear it first. Now, we're going to get into that in a second because it explains all of that, right? These are often, okay, so then one thing, just we're going to touch on slightly. So I call this Sri Sarabloh Granth Sahib, but I also mentioned that at the begin, in brackets, it says Sri Manglacharan ji, right? So why does it have two names? So there's a bit of a paragraph where it basically says, I'm going to skip over a lot of it because I can't read everything because this video would be too long. And the other thing I want to mention, I'm providing certain examples from certain texts, but there's many more examples. It's just that this video, I mean, there's so much information. We're going to try to make it concise, but it's pretty impossible. So it says here, क्योंकि इस ग्रंथ दी इत सरी विच मंगलाचरण पुराण नाम है, इसे कारण इस दे आद विच सरबलोह प्रकाश नाम हो ही नहीं सकता. So it's basically saying like, it's actually called Manglacharan, but it says ਸਰਬਲੋਹ ਅਵਤਾਰ ਦੀ ਕਥਾ ਹੋਣ ਕਰਕੇ ਹੀ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਉਪਮਾਨ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਸਰਬਲੋਹ ਗ੍ਰੰਥ ਸਰਬਲੋਹ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਸ਼ ਅਤੇ ਲੋਹ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਸ਼ ਆਦਿ ਪ੍ਰਸਿੱਧ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਹਨ. So basically it's saying that it's because of some of the content, some of the poetry and the subject matter and stories in here about this incarnation called Sarabloh, that it's basically in common reference, it's started to be called Sri Sarabloh Granth, Sarabloh Prakash, and also Loh Prakash. Okay, so we're not going to get into that much of that. I just wanted to introduce that to you because, you know, this is not that well known of a compilation, and some people in pre-colonial Sikh circles have heard of it, but you know, it's very difficult to find somebody that knows it in depth. And I mean, it's very complicated, and I definitely don't know it in depth, but we're trying our best, right? And that's why sometimes I just want to introduce the fact that sometimes it's known by different names, okay? Then it goes into, so the meanings of these goddesses' names, right? And it talks about the most famous one, Chandika, okay? So it says here, so Chandika basically very well, like, I mean, to put it like concisely, the story of Chandi or Chandika is that there's a battle. So basically these antagonists, they're called Rakish, and I've heard different translations in English. I've heard the word antagonist, enemies, demons, anti-gods, like many different translations. But basically they attack the home of the gods. And the gods go to this goddess named Chandi and they ask her for help. And then the narrative is about this battle and how she helps them and how she manifests in different forms. So that's just very quickly to give you some context. So basically it says here, if I find it, Sri Guru Gobind Singh Sahib Ji di rachna to ਅਤੇ ਸੰਸਕ੍ਰਿਤ ਮਰਕੰਡੇਯ ਪੁਰਾਣ ਦੀ ਦੁਰਗਾ ਸਪਤ ਸ਼ਕਤੀ ਚੋਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਰੂਪ ਚੰਡਿਕਾ ਦਾ ਮਿਲਦਾ ਹੈ, ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਸਾਬਤ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਚੰਡਿਕਾ ਦੀ ਕਥਾ ਕੋਈ ਇਤਿਹਾਸਿਕ ਘਟਨਾ ਨਹੀਂ, ਬਲਕਿ ਇਹੋ ਇੱਕ ਫਿਲਸਫਾ ਹੈ ਜਿਸ ਦਾ ਭਾਵ ਜਗ ਨੂੰ ਜੰਗ ਵਾਲੀ ਰੁਚੀ ਪੈਦਾ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈ. So basically it's saying from Guru Gobind Singh's writings and from older writings like the Sanskrit epic Markandeya Puran, that what they're saying here is that some people wonder, okay, these battles, did they actually happen? And a lot of people believe that they did, that these are actual historical characters or personalities, and these battles happened, right? And there is that possibility that and then over time a mythology was developed around them, sure. But what it's saying here is that it's not a historical occurrence, right? But rather it's a philosophy, or basically a way to create a Jang wali ruchi, basically to give birth to or to create like like and sometimes it's hard to translate as well, but basically like to inspire people for battle, right? To give them courage, right? And why? Because you have to understand the context of historically what was going on. India essentially had been enslaved by invading empires, the Turk Empire, which is sometimes called the Mughal Empire, and people didn't have the courage to rise up and protect themselves. And Guru Gobind Singh was trying to basically motivate and inspire people to basically destroy the tyranny that had afflicted the land. And so that's why a lot of these epics, from the perspective of scholars in Guru Gobind Singh's writings, they're about war, about battle, about bravery, about sacrifice, and so on, to get people out of this fearful coma that they had been in for centuries, and inspire them to basically free themselves. So I just want to mention that, okay? Because a lot of people are like, there's a lot of mythology around these and supernatural events that happen in these battles, and people are like, no, it must have happened exactly how it's written. And then there's other people that say, no, there's like metaphors and literary devices that are used, and that's very important, metaphors and literary devices. So here it's saying that it's more of a philosophy to inspire people to be brave, to inspire bravery in battle, okay? And then it goes into more. It goes Jera Lachin Parameshwar Dehan, Ohi Lachin Chandika Dehan. So the qualities or characteristics of the creator, of God, of the highest being, those are the qualities of Chandika, the goddess. Now there's two ways to interpret this, but they're essentially the same thing. One, like we're going to, actually, you know what? We're going to wait. I'm going to introduce another concept first. So it says, Phir Parmeshwar te Chandika vich ki farak hai. So what is the difference between Chandika and the creator of, or the highest being, okay? So let's see. It starts going into the meanings of those words. So the words that had triggered people, Sri Bhavani ji Sahai, it says Bhavani the Arat Pada Karan Wali Shakti. So the meaning of Bhavani is that Shakti, or that energy, or you can say that characteristic, or that ability, that power. There's so many ways to translate these using context, which creates, gives birth to. Okay? Then it says, Bhavani the Arat Pada Karan Wali Shakti hai, ate Maya Lachmi the Arat Palan Karan Wali Shakti hai. So Maya Lachmi, the second part of what we read at the beginning, is that Shakti, or that characteristic, or that strength, or that energy, however you want to translate it, that nurtures, right? Nurtures the world, nurtures creation, okay? Now, what's very interesting is that there's a commentary about stone idols, because when a lot of people, either in the modern day Hindu tradition or the Sikh tradition, they hear these words, they think about like these goddesses in the form of stone idols. And that's why in the Sikh tradition, a lot of people, obviously, like in the Sikh tradition, it's very opposed to stone idols. Except there have, generally speaking, and basically that's what people associate with these names, these goddesses. But it's basically saying Deviyan ਦੀਆਂ ਮੂਰਤੀਆਂ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਵਾਲਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਪੁਰਾਣਾ ਅਤੇ ਵੇਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਰਚਨਾ ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਭਾਰੀ ਸੱਟਾਂ ਮਾਰੀਆਂ ਹਨ. So it's basically saying that people who make these idols have basically dealt a large blow on the philosophy, the beliefs, or of the Purans and the Vedas, which are classic Hindu texts. So basically, and then it criticizes the people. It even calls them Pakandiya, the people who make idols. So that's one thing. It's basically making a differentiation, right? It says here, as we go on, It says, when it, and again, I'm paraphrasing, okay? There's a lot here. It says, Eho sare parmeshwar de ad ad guna de varnan hai. So basically, all of these different names that people over time have either created into idols, or they've thought of them as separate entities, separate goddesses, or divine beings, they're actually just expressions of the separate qualities of the creator, of God, of Parmeshwar, right? So this is very interesting because now, as we go on, and I'm going to skip a whole section, the next part of Sri Sarabloh Granth Sahib, so here you can see how much detail these Sikhs go into when they're explaining these concepts. Like, one or two lines have an entire, I mean, in English we call them pages, but in Punjabi we'll call them angs. An entire ang or two just to explain one or two lines. It's very in-depth, and this is very high-level scholarship. And like I said, it is intimidating, but you can kind of do what I'm doing and just kind of, you know, try to get your way through and struggle and make mistakes. But eventually, over time, you just start to learn. So the next line in Sri Sarabloh Granth Sahib is Ustate Sri Maya Lachmi Ji Ki Sri Mukhya Vakya Patashahi Dasam. So Ustat means praise. Praise of the respected Maya Lachmi, which we, in the previous section, we have determined is not like a demigoddess, but instead it's just the quality of the creator, the quality of Vaheguru, the highest being, God, whatever you want to call it, that basically nurtures the world and existence like a mother. And it says Sri Mukhvak Patashahi Dasvi, which means basically from the mouth of the 10th king, which is Guru Gobind Singh. Now, this is something I really want to draw to your attention. The first section here addresses the controversies around Sarabloh Granth Sahib, how some people believe in it and some people don't. It says, Eho Granth Sri Guru Gobind Singh Sahib Ji di rachna hai athva nahi. So it's basically saying, is this Guru Gobind Singh's poetry, his creation, yes or no? Is prashan nu main ikala nahi hal kar sakta. It's basically saying, I can't answer this by myself, right? So the next part here lists a bunch of respected scholars who believe in Sarabloh Granth Sahib and its authenticity. So it says, Gyani Gyan Singh Ji ne Panth Prakash vich Sarabloh nu Sri Mukh Vak Pasha Dasvi manaya hai. So Gyani Gyan Singh, a very well-known Sikh historian, believes in it. Bhai Sumer Singh Ji ne Sarabloh Sri Mukh Vak Pasha Dasvi manaya hai. Vekho Prem Pad Prakash Dasam Mandal. So Baba Sumer Singh Ji, another well-respected scholar from the past, right? Granthi Sri Hazur Sahiba Kali Hazura Singh Ji Nahang ne vi Satguran di rachna manaya hai. Akali Kaur Singh Ji Nehang ne vi Satguran di rachna hi manaya hai. Baba, and it's kind of smudged out a bit, but I think it's a Baba Tyan Singh Ji Kattu Nabha वालिया ने भी श्री गुरु जी दी रचना स्वीकार कीता है. See, sometimes with Punjabi we trip over, right? Buddha dal Panjwa Takhta Sri Guru ji rachit स्वीकार करता है, right? So these are just scholars, institutions that believe in Sarabloh Granth Sahib. But it also says Sri Man Pandit Tara Singh Ji ate Khan Singh Ji Nabha ne is nu Sri Guru Ji di rachna nahi manya. And so these are two scholars that don't believe that this is Guru Gobind Singh's writings. Why am I mentioning this? Because true scholarship, true knowledge takes into account other opinions. You take all the opinions, all the research that you can do, and then you form an opinion. These days, all over the place, there's an epidemic in all circles where nobody wants to actually take other people's opinions into account. Everybody just wants to argue and fight right away. And that's not the Sikh tradition. The Sikh tradition, as per I've been taught, is you listen to other people's ideas and suggestions and their sources, and then and then you do it in a peaceful, respectful way, which we don't do these days. So I found it very interesting that both like scholars from both sides of the controversy have been mentioned here, right? And then here it says there's another book that goes more into depth about that controversy, which I haven't read that book, but I wanted to, this is something that we need to revive. We need to be able to sit with each other in a peaceful, kind, respectful way, listen to our each other's opinions, and then present our own opinions, and then we can grow our knowledge, you know. But I mean, that's wishful thinking, right? So now it goes more into the meaning of Chandika, okay, which is often misunderstood. It says Sri Guru Gobind Singh Sahib Ji di rachna vich Parasnath Avatar di Katha vich Chandika Kal da hi naam hai. So that's very important. So Guru Gobind Singh wrote an epic poem called Parasnath Avatar, right? And we're going in the future, Guru Prasad will go into it. We're not going to go into like all these sources in depth today with this video. But basically, what's interesting, it says Chandika Kal da hi naam hai. Kal. Kal, basically, I've heard different translations, but essentially it means either time or death, right? And if you think about it at a higher, so another thing, at a lower level of interpretation, many of these words have different meanings. But as you go higher and higher and higher in your thought process, you realize everything is one. So Kal, you know, like I said, it can be interpreted as time or death, but at a higher level of understanding, those two things essentially become the same thing, because everything is subject to time and everything dies, be it people, planets, stars, solar systems, galaxies, universes. Everything is subject to time and eventually everything is destroyed. But this is interesting because now what we understand is Chandika is not like a demigoddess or like a historical figure. She is a metaphor for the concept of time or death, okay? There's more, basically there's more sources that back this up. Krishna Avatar vich vi Kal te Chandika eko hi han. So Krishna Avatar is another epic by Guru Gobind Singh, and it says in that epic as well, Kal and Chandika are one. And then it says apni katha bichitar नाटक विच भी महाकाल काल का आराध्य एक ही है. So Guru Gobind Singh's own, I guess you can call it his autobiography. This is a line from it. It says Mahakal Kal ka Aradhi. A lot of people have misquoted that, but again, it says they're one, right? Sarabloh vich vi Kal Purakh Parmeshwar te Chandika eko hi han. So even in this text, right, there's that Kal Purakh, the being that created death, which is Vaheguru, God, and Chandika are one. And then it goes into more detail, right? And then a few lines down, it says, Eho Parameshwara de Istri Ling Nam Han. Basically, these goddesses, this divine feminine, which people think are separate, all they are is feminine tenses or feminine names to describe Parameshwar, to describe God, the highest being, Vaheguru, right? They're just different ways to describe that one consciousness, that reality. And then it goes into more. It says, Istri ya Purakh Ling Shabda ya Rupa vich Manan Nal Kuch Farak Nahi Penda. So basically, using words that are feminine or masculine, these forms, these feminine forms, these masculine forms, these words, believing in them, it says kuch farak nahi penda. There's no difference. It's all the same. It's all one. Okay? And then we're not going to go more because there's so much here on that, but that's basically the synopsis of it. One thing here, it does say, for later on, I want to introduce this concept. It says the concept of Maya is Pav Sansar. Maya means like the creation, okay? Another thing that I'm going to quickly touch on, and again, we're going to go more into depth in a future video, is there's a difference between Maya Lachmi and Maya, okay? It says Maya is like this, is not the same as Maya Lachmi. Maya Lachmi is basically the quality of the creator, and Maya is the illusion of the world that we see in front of us, okay? So that's that, okay? So now we can have a working knowledge from Sri Sarabloh Granth Sahib about these goddesses, this divine feminine, Chandika, Sri Bhavani Ji, Sri Maya Lachmi, that they are not individual demigoddesses in a pantheon, but instead they are just qualities of the highest reality of God, Vaheguru Parmeshwar, Akal Purkh, that have been personified as God, as like a goddess, okay? Now we're not done here, okay? So I'm just going to refer to my notes. And basically it's like the same, I want to introduce this idea to you. It's the same concept, just different names. Now you're going to ask me, well, how do we know that's true? What's your supporting evidence? Everything you got to say, every opinion should have supporting evidence, okay? So then what we're going to do is we're going to go to another compilation of Guru Gobind Singh's called Sri Dasam Granth Sahib Ji, okay? Now we have two Sikhs here that we're going to go into. This one is by Dr. Jodh Singh, and I have 2 volumes of this. I believe, so it's incomplete. There's at least 3, possibly more, but I know of 3. And the third one is very difficult to find. I don't think it's in print, and I mean, I can probably assume I know why. But this is an English translation. Dr. Jodh Singh has done a great job. But we're gonna, and when you're starting off, English translations, I mean, that's what I relied on when I started, right? And I still rely on them to a certain extent. So here, we're gonna go through a part where we're gonna talk about the goddess, right? But in order to talk about the goddess, so how do we know that this goddess refers to Vaheguru, God, Akal Purkh, right? We have to go, in order to understand the backstory and basically the whole narrative of Chandi, we have to go to a compilation by Guru Gobind Singh, a poem called Chandi Chetar Okate Balas, okay? It starts off with Savaya, Ada Para Lekandant Akal Apek Alak Anasa, right? The English translation is God is primal being, unfathomable, inexpressible, deathless, not limited by any expression or any specific garb, and indestructible. And then that's just the first 2 sentences. There's much more, right? If we go down a bit, it says Savaya, Taran Loko Taran Pumahed Danta Sangaran Chand Tu Hi Hai. You are the Chandi, the killer of demons and ameliorator of humans on this earth. You are the primal power. Okay? So here, it's basically saying that this primal creator consciousness, right, Akal Purkh, Vaheguru, and so on, that's known by so many names, you are Chandi, right? It means that you manifested, you created Chandi. So one thing that we need to understand from Sarabloh Granth Sahib, there's 2 ways to look at Chandi Devi. Chandi was created by the creator, or Chandi is the creator. It's just a different name. And essentially, again, if you look at it like at a very base level, there's 2 separate meanings there. But when you think about it at a higher, you really go into it, you realize that the characteristics of the creator are representative of the creator. So when the creator was basically nothing else existed, there were no qualities. There's nothing else existed, and the creator created these qualities. And these qualities are an extension of the creator, but they were created. So that's why when it says Chandi was created, and you can say that Chandi is the creator, they're interchangeable. Because a quality of the creator represents the creator. right? I know it's kind of weird, it's difficult, and I'm still trying to get my head around it, but that's why you'll see these interpretations interchange. That the goddess was created by the creator, or the goddess is the feminine tense for the creator. But they both mean the same thing, right? So that being said, okay, so here in Chandi Tritar, it basically says that the goddess the creator, the goddess is an expression of the creator, right? So if we go to another stick, so we're going to put the English one away for a second. We're going to go to this one, Dasam Granth Sahib stick. This is probably the most famous one in Punjabi, Gyani Narayan Singh Ji. Okay, very well known, very amazing resource, but it's in again, so it has like Guru Singh's poetry, and then it has a summary of what it means, right? And the summary is in Punjabi, and again, like I said, we're just going to try our best. Okay, I want to take the same passage that we had in the English, because one thing we have to do is we can't rely on the English translations. Even though a lot of times they're great, a lot of times in certain texts they can be misleading. We want to graduate to the Punjabi understandings, right? So here, same thing, it says, so the same passage from Chandi Chetar Ukate Balas. It says, Sveya. Ade para lek anant akal apek alak anasa. Right? What is the translation there? Oho akal purakh sab da mool hai. Usta para nahi paya ja sakta. And then it goes on. Right? So basically it says, again, we know that this passage is referring to Akal Purkh, to the original consciousness, right? When we go to that part that we mentioned before, Svaya, Taran Loko Taran Pumahed Dan Sangaran Chanda Tuhi hai, right? Srishti de Loka Nu Taran Wala. Sorry, it says Hey Akal Purkh. That's the meaning, the summary of what it means. Hey Akal Purkh, O timeless being. Srishti de Loka Nu Taran Wala, Tarti de Udar Karan Wala, and Danta Nu Nas Karan Wala, Te Chand Tej Saroop Tu Hi Hai. So again, we're just the same meaning, right? It just means that you are the origin of everything, and you are actually Chandi, okay? So now we're going to go into what we call Chandi Diwar. Varasri Bhagoti Ji ki Patashahi Dasmi, right? Now, one thing I'm going to go through this in depth one day, Guprasad, but a lot of people don't know. They've heard of Chandi Diwar, perhaps. They don't know that they recite a part of Chandi Diwar every day. The Sikh Ardas, or the prayer that Sikhs do at least twice a day, the first part of it comes from Chandi Diwar. The part where people have heard of is that body. Pritam Pagoti Simir Kya Guru Nanak Le Te Aaye. Phir Angad Guru Te Amardas Ramdasa Hoi Sahai. Arjun Hare Gobind Nu Simrao Sri Hare Rai. Sri Hare Krishan Tiyaya Jiso Dithe Sab Dukh Jaye. Teg Bahadur Simariya Kar No Nid Ave Taye. Sab Thai Hoi Sahai. Everybody's heard that. Every Sikh has heard that. If you're new to the tradition, you will hear it, right? A lot of people don't know that that comes from Chandi Diwar, right? I just want to bring that out. Now, I'm going to go to a part where it's talking about the goddess Durga, okay? So again, I'm just picking different parts of this, but here we see the same goddess is known by different names. So Chandi manifested as Durga and went to battle with the demons, right? So it says here, Pauri Khanda Pritma Saj Ka Jin Sabse Saro Paya Brahma Bisanam He Saj Kudarte De Khel Chai Banaya. सिंध पर्वत मेदनी बिन थम्मा गगन रहाया सिरजे दानो देवते तिन अंदर बाद रचाया तैही दुर्गा साज कै दैंता दा नासो कराया. So one thing, when you start, so these hype you up. When you read Chandi Diwar, you get inspired, you get energy. I don't know what it is, but here we see is like Guprasad, like it's designed to hype you up and to give you courage. And we're going to go more into why it's important to read Chandi Diwar later on. But here, ta satahi Durga Saj ka danta da naso kraya. Right? So here the word Durga is used. What's the translation? Hey Akapur, tusan aap hi Durga Devi nu rachya te os paso dukhdai danta nu marvaya. Right? So, hey Akalpur, timeless being, right? You created Durga Devi, and the demons, the Danta, or however you want to translate that, you basically killed them, right? So again, it goes back to the concept, a quality of the creator was created and personified. Now, one thing I want to just mention in case I forget, should I do it now or should I do it later? I shall do it later, okay? When we go to another section, so Durga is used, right? But then it says, Pori hoya lopa pavani devanu rajode. So it says here, now we see the word Bhavani is used, right? So we have Durga, now we have Bhavani used. Rakshanu maar ke te devtiyan nu swarg da raj saump ke Devi Durga alop pav antartyan ho gayi. So basically, after defeating the demons and giving the kingdom to the god, restoring the kingdom of the gods, the Devi Durga. But here it says, the translation said Devi Durga because they're the same, but it says Pavani Deva, like Pavani, basically disappeared, which basically means she disappeared and began meditating, right? But that's like a deep concept, but she disappeared, she just left. She won the battle and she's like, all right, peace out, she's gone. So I just want to bring attention here. Again, the same goddess, the same name, the same concept, everything, different name is used. Okay? Here, it says, so Durga has been used, Bhavani has been used, Pauri. Katakuthi ran Chandi Fauja dekh kya. Here, Chandi is used, right? जंग दे मैदान विच राक्षसां दियां फौजां वेख के दुर्गा बिजली वांगू खड़की, right? Basically, okay, sorry, I missed the line. At the beginning is that Pori, I pher Bhavani khabri pahiyan. Bhavani de aun di khabar raksha nu mil gayi कि सानू नाश करन वाली देवी देवतियां दी सहायता लई रणभूमि विच पहुंच गई है. Right? So what I'm trying to say, I'm trying to give you proof. In one line, Bhavani is used. In a few lines later, Chandi is used. To show you that it's the same energy, same concept, same personification, metaphor, just different names. Right? Then, there's another passage where another name is introduced. Suri Sangar, so Podi, Suri Sangar Chair Tol Sank Nagare Vaika, Chandra Tetari Kalka Man Bahala Rosa Badaika. Right? Ranpumi vich Surmya ne Tol Sank te Nagare Vajake Jang Aram Kita. Durga ne apne man vich bahut gussa vada ke Kali Devi nu chitariya. Pav Kalka nu apne kol sadya. So here we have the word Kali being used. Now here you might think, the reason I highlighted this passage is because here it seems like it's two different goddesses. Kali emerged from Durga, right, from Chandi. The same thing. The reason I say that is it says, And then Kali basically went on a very terrible, like it says here, Kali Devi ne Ranbhumi vich gussa khake bada bhyanak jang kita. She did a terrible, she waged a terrible war. Why did I want to bring that to your attention here? Because when we go to the Dr. Jodh Singh Sikh, when we look at the translation here, Dr. Jodh Singh, when he mentions that, the part which says Chand Chitari Kalika Man Bahala Roho Vadai Ka, right? The warriors started the battle with the beating of drums. The goddess Chandi meditated on the timeless Lord, but had only wrath in her mind. Out of Durga's head came out the power of the timeless Lord, as if it were symbolic of victory, right? So here, Dr. Jodh Singh has translated Kalka, Kali, as the power of the timeless Lord, right? So that's a deeper, that's not a literal translation, that's like a deeper understanding, right? So that's why in one sense you might think these were like two goddesses, but then at a deeper sense, because these goddesses represent qualities of the timeless Lord, of Akal Purkh Waheguru, that's essentially what happened. Same concept, different ways to express it, right? So that's why, and then it said the goddess was seething with rage, and she rotated many a well-known warriors above her head and threw away. So basically, in this sense, like the English translations it gives you some context, but that's why I wanted to introduce these passages and juxtapose them in the two different translations, right? Now, so now we have proof that it's different names, same concept, or different names representing the same Akal Purkh, timeless being, right? Now, one thing I wanted to bring to people's attention, just as an aside, and then we're going to go more into this later. In the beginning of this, Varasi Bhagoti Ji ki Patashahi Dasam, and it's a Pauri Pratham Bhagoti Simar Kya, right? Bhagoti, what does that mean, right? So here in the translation it says, "Sab to pehla main Bhagoti Shakti nu simar ke, phir apne Satguru Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji nu tionda ha," right? Bhagoti here is translated as that primal energy and force, right? But if we go a little later on, sorry, 1 second, I have to find the passage. My bookmark fell out. Oh, here we go. No. So as you can tell, I'm not very well to do when it comes to presentation. I don't know how to make things fancy, but that's okay, because knowledge should always be at the forefront. So there's a part where it's a pori, Doha Kandara Mohe Jure, Nal Tosa Pari, Lei Pagoti Durga Shah Var Jagan Apari, right? It says here, Devi Durga ne bari chamakdar te tikhi talwar apne hath vich far lei. So here, Pagoti is being translated. It's being saying that the goddess Durga, she took a very a glistening, beautiful, radiant, and very sharp sword in her hand. Okay, so here you have the word sword, but at the beginning here you have the word primal energy, right? These words have multiple meanings, right? And you have to understand the context of when things are being said. But again, as I mentioned, I reiterate this over and over and over again, is that they're separate meanings, but as you go higher and higher and higher in your understanding and the philosophy, you realize everything returns to one, because a sword represents that primal energy. And that energy is manifested, that primal energy is used to, it's like the protector. Chandi is the protector of people, and the sword is how you protect people, right? The reason I say that is that Sant Gyani Gurbachan Singh Ji, one of the most famous scholars in the past, in recent memory, he has a katha or explanation of Chandi Diwar, and you can go listen to it. It's remarkable, and he talks about, I mean, you can just do a search for it. Vade Mahapurush Ji, he basically says that he lists, like, for one word, he lists like 10 meanings. It's amazing, the knowledge and the interpretation. And he cites where he gets these words from. So he cites Amarkosh, which is a very well-known dictionary, right? And that's how we know that, like, you have to understand context. You have to understand, as you put in different meanings for the words, right? You get different understandings of what's being said here. It just gets deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And I want to bring that to people's attention, because I'll give you an example. And this I want to save for later. Remember this. So the second passage in Chandi Diwar Pori, Khanda Pritma Saj Ka Jin Sabse Saro Paya Brahma Bisan Mahes Saj Kudrte Da Khelo Rachai Banaya. The Khanda word right here. Khanda people translate as a double-edged sword, and they take it literally, saying this word means a double-edged sword. Okay. Oh, I wanted to say, I forgot to mention. So, no, I said it. Okay. So, Vade Mahapurush Sant Gyani Gurbachan Singh, he says Pagoti has different meanings, and he lists like 5 or 6, but one of them he says is sword. Okay, but then there's other meanings as well, right? Khanda, he says Khanda's actual meaning is Kal. Remember, in Sarabloh Granth Sahib, we went and we realized Dandika means Kal. Kal means time or death. Sant Gyani Gurbachan Singh Ji also says Khanda means Kal. He also says Khanda also means Maya, which is the sansar, which we saw in Sarabloh Granth Sahib, right? The illusion of the world, right? It also means ignorance, agyanta, like agyan, right? The absence of knowledge, right? Different words. But why is that important? Because people take it literally, like a giant sword was created. The concept of death and time was created. So Akal Purkh, the being without death, without time, right, created this quality. And that quality, in the beginning, Khanda Pritma Sajika, Jin Sabsa Saro Paya, that created the creation. So everything is under the concept of death and time. And then these demigods, that people call them demigods, but they're actually just qualities. Brahma, Bisana, Mahes, right? The 3 qualities of Maya, of illusion, were created, right? So I just wanted to bring that in. Khanda, it means, it's another word for Kal, for time, for death, okay? So now we're getting somewhere, right? We're trying to get some kind of idea here that of what these Devi, these concepts mean in Divine Feminine. Okay, so now you're going to say, now we've gone through kind of scriptural meanings, right? And now let's go through historical occurrences of the goddesses. So we're going to talk about different historical sources. So this is called Sketch of the Sikhs, or Sikhs. It's by Lieutenant Colonel Malcom, right? Edited by Pritpal Singh Kapoor. And basically, the backstory of this is, it says here in the opening, the present work, a first serious study on Sikhism by a European, was originally published in 1812. The author, John Malcom, and it says 2/5/1769 to 30/5/1833. So that would be the 2nd of January, February, March, April, May. So May 2nd up until May 30th. That's when he passed away, I guess. He served in the army of East India Company and later in the diplomatic service, right? So this was a British officer that went to India and went to Punjab and wrote his basically commentary on what he saw and the people there. There's a couple things we need to understand. These sources, I wouldn't say they're reliable, but they have utility. Meaning there are things in here that contradict our tradition and what we know because he simply didn't know, right? So we're always going to go, everybody, and the other thing I want to point out, everybody has a bias. I have a bias, you have a bias, everybody has a bias. It's important to recognize your bias, right? So my bias is I'm always going to take a Sikh source over a foreign source, but these do have utility. They should be read, right? And I say that because in Sketch of the Sikhs, he himself says, for although the information I may convey in such a sketch may be very defective, it will be useful at a moment when every information regarding the Sikhs is of importance. So even he says that some of this information is incorrect. There are things in here that contradict our knowledge and we understand simply because he wasn't aware. But some of his firsthand, I guess, it gives you a glimpse. So some of his firsthand observations are very useful. His interpretations of some of our history and of some of our philosophies, not so much. You're going to be like, well, why am I going to quote some of the things that are said here? You'll see, right, that there is utility in understanding them. He even says, so why do we believe in our sources? Excuse me. He says, it is of the most essential importance to hear what a nation has to say of itself. Okay, and what do we say about ourselves? They're in our history and our interpretations. So why am I bringing this up? Because if we skip to page 50, and again, many examples here, but it's referring to Guru Gobind Singh, and I'm going to paraphrase, and it says, it's referring to certain accounts, which he didn't see, but he learned about. And then he said, and one of the most respectable and best informed authors of the sect, so of the Sikhs, right, states that when Guru Gobind Singh first went to Anandpur, right, and then and I'm paraphrasing, which was also called Keskar, or the House of Air, he spent much of his time in devotion at a temple of Durga Bhavani, the goddess of courage. So even in historical narratives from other people outside the Sikh faith, I'm bringing this up because you hear these names. Now, the note here says the goddess Durga Bhavani is said by a Sikh author to be represented in some images with their hair long and disheveled. Okay, because he's talking about long hair, which is part of the Khalsa or the initiated Sikh belief system, right? The editor here introduces his beliefs in a note. He says, the Sikh tradition and the Sikh tenets strongly refute any such possibility of worship having been undertaken by Guru Gobind Singh at the temple of goddess Durga, editor, right? So, you know, that's a commentary on what's being said. We're not going to get into that so much. I just wanted to bring to your attention that even outside sources, he was told, it says here, one of the most respectable and best informed authors of that sect. I don't personally know who he's referring to. Maybe somebody out there knows, or maybe I'll find out in the future, but this vocabulary, you know, was prominent even in this time frame, 1812. There's another passage. It's talking about Guru Gobind Singh, comparing Guru Gobind Singh to Guru Nanak, and then the customs of Guru Gobind Singh's followers, who are the same as Guru Nanak's followers. It's one and the same. In the Sikh tradition, we believe they're both the same. And it says, and though the peculiar customs and dress among his followers are stated to have been adopted from veneration to the Hindu goddess of courage, Durga Bhavani, right? And then it says, yet it is impossible to reconcile the religion and usage which Govind, referring to Guru Gobind Singh, has established with the belief of the Hindus, right? So it's just a commentary comparing the two traditions. It goes into more detail, but again, we're not going to go so much into that detail. We're just saying that, again, Durga Bhavani was prevalent, was like those words existed in the faith, even from from an outside perspective, right? There's one thing I just quickly want to bring into, and again, like what I'm saying is, I'm showing you that these words have existed in the Sikh tradition, and then their interpretations vary, right? So we talked about Dasam Granth Sahib, which a lot of people take, this is just a side note, a lot of people take offense and a lot of people take exception to Dasam Granth Sahib. They don't believe in it, right? Here, Mr. Malcom is referring to when the leaders of the different Sikh or the Khalsa battalions from the army come together, and they're referred to as chiefs. And what happens when they come together? And it says, when the chiefs and principal leaders are seated, the Ade Granth and Dasama Pad, I'm just reading it how he wrote it, Ade Granth and Dasama Pad Shah Ka Granth are placed before them. They all bend their heads before these scriptures and exclaim, Wa Guru Ji Ka Khalsa, Wa Guru Ji Ki Fateh. So two things to know here. So Wa Guru Ji Ka Khalsa sounds kind of like a politician at a Nagar Kirtan. If you know, you know. So it says two scriptures are placed. Adi Guru Granth Sahib, which is Guru Granth Sahib, and Dasam Pasha Ka Granth. So Dasam Pasha Ka Granth just basically means that the compilation of the 10th king, Guru Gobind Singh's compilation, right? Today it's been shortened to Dasam Granth Sahib. I just found it interesting that there's a commentary here that when the chiefs, the leaders of the Khalsa Panth, the Sikh armies, come together, both scriptures, they bow to both scriptures. Now the second thing I noticed is that it says they all bend their heads before these scriptures, right? So that sign of respect, just bending the head, is different than how we bow today. And I just found that interesting. So and there's more examples of this. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Okay. So now we're gonna go. So that's a source outside the Sikh tradition, looking in on us, right? Now let's go into a Sikh source. Okay, a couple Sikh historical sources. So this is called City. So this text. One second. So this is called Sri Gur Sobha by Kavi Sainapat, right? It's an English translation. And what does, who is that? So I'm just going to read the beginning intro to this that the editors made, okay? It says here, this volume presents an English translation of Sainapat's Sri Gur Sobha, an important text that was written in the court of Guru Gobind Singh. So this particular poet, this text, Kavi or poet Sainapat, was a court poet of Guru Gobind Singh. So this is basically a contemporary to Guru Gobind Singh. And then later on, it also says that the Guru himself at times read and corrected Sri Gur Sobha. Okay, so that's very important. And then one thing so this kind of intro was written by Dr. Harpreet Singh, Department of South Asian Studies, Harvard University, Cambridge. Why am I bringing that up? I've never met this person. I'm sure they're a wonderful person. But in the commentary, you can see his bias. Like I said, I have a bias, you have a bias. So if you do pick this up, these are things I want you to be aware of. Study the text, be aware of commentaries and people's biases. I mean, I just know the different opinions around some of the texts. So it's basically referring to certain texts in Sri Dasam Granth Sahib. And there's a bias there. And I have a bias, you have a bias. I just want you to be aware that don't be influenced by other people's biases. Instead, acknowledge them and see the merit in them and see also where there could be issues around them, and then form your own opinions, right? So in this text, I want to bring something to your attention. So this is a Sikh text, contemporary to Guru Gobind Singh. There's a passage here where they're talking about where, the primal being, God, Creator, Vaheguru, sent messengers, right? And basically to summarize it, it says, whomever I had rewarded for their devotion, they empowered themselves after receiving powers from me. So these people, religious prophets, kings, people of notoriety, and so on, they basically started promoting themselves, right? So in the English translation, it says, none amongst these highly arrogant ones was spared, for their decimation was goddess Chandi created. So that's the English translation. When we go here to, it says, Nahi ek jane bade garbakari, tyanga marbe kaj Chandi sotari. Right? So here in a contemporary text of Guru Gobind Singh, the word Chandi is mentioned. And it says that Chandi was created to destroy these arrogant people. Okay, so again, the philosophy of that can be debated and talked about, but I just want to bring your attention to the fact that even in the Sikh text, contemporary of Guru Gobind Singh, that the mention of Chandi Devi goddess is mentioned. Okay, so then, in this one, the English translation, Professor Kulwant Singh, Institute of Sikh Studies, Chandigarh. Okay, why do I bring that up? Because there's another text, a historical text, very famous, Sri Guru Panth Prakash, and this is one volume of 2, English translation by the same person, I believe, Kulwant Singh, Institute of Sikh Studies, Chandigarh. Why do I bring this up? Sri Guru Panth Prakash by Rattan Singh Bhangoo is considered the history of the Khalsa Panth. So I said this before, if you want to know what it means to be a Khalsa, you want to know how the Khalsa, every information that you need, what does a Khalsa think, how does a Khalsa worship, like the mentality of the Khalsa, so to speak, what does the Khalsa wear, what do they eat, so on. How did the Khalsa gain political autonomy, how, like everything like that, it's in Panth Prakash. If you want to know anything about the Khalsa Panth and you haven't read Panth Prakash, then there's nothing, you have to read this, otherwise it's impossible for you to know what it means to be Khalsa, right? It's a historical text. It's considered the history of the Khalsa Panth. Why do I bring that up? So this one is, it says Rattan Singh Bhangoo's magnum opus 1841 is one of the primary historical chronicles and seminal works about the origin and evolution of the Khalsa Panth, more specifically about the 18th century of the Sikhs and so on and so on. So 1841-ish. Sri Guru Sobha, there's a passage here I forgot to mention. It does talk about like historically, like the date, but it says there's some controversy, but it's generally thought maybe around the 1700s, right? But it wasn't written all at once. So early, like I think it says 1701-ish or something like that. They're not exactly sure. That's why I didn't go too much into that detail, right? Secondly, these dates are I think they're like the translation of the the Western calendar, right? In Punjab, there's a separate calendar, but so sometimes when you're looking at dates, things can get confusing. It's like, which calendar are they referring to, right? So that's just a side note for you, because I got confused once, and we'll go into where I got confused in a few minutes. So many references to the goddesses in here. This passage happens at a very important and very famous episode in Sikh history, where Guru Gobind Singh is being attacked in the battle of Chamkor, and his 2 oldest sons give their lives in battle, right? The English translation here, it says, then reflecting over the whole situation deeply and calmly, Satguru declared that he had returned his beloved sons to their creator. The word creator is used. Okay? In the Punjabi, when you go over it, it says, Do hara. Ton siri Satguru socho ham Chandi sompa thai. So the word Chandi is used in the original, right? Now, if we subscribe to the philosophy that we've been talking about, that Chandi is just another name for the creator, then that's perfectly fine, right? And the author has chosen to put the word creator, right? But the other thing is that sometimes, like, if we didn't know that, we wouldn't know that the word Chandi is used, right? If we couldn't read Punjabi or Gurmukhi, right? So this is where sometimes it's very important to, I mean, I will tell you right now, anybody who can translate these texts into English from Punjabi or their original sources or the original languages is very high level, because it's very difficult to translate these. I'm not saying everyone is high level, but like my love and respect to them, I rely on these. But again, it's impossible to completely be 100% accurate, and then we can interpret as well, right? So again, the word creator was used in the original, the word Chandi is used. Technically, we can argue that the creator and Chandi, which we have been, is the same thing, but at the same time, if you don't know that Chandi is being used, you can get a wrong understanding as well, right? So I wanted to bring that to your attention, but more importantly, we wanted to highlight the fact that, again, in this text, the history of the Khalsa Panth, Chandi is used, right? Another passage from this is that there's an episode here where we're not going to go into the historical details, but it says, Rai Dala then beseeched Satguru after the ogre's departure that they should make a sacrifice of a buffalo to the goddess Bhavani. Right now, this is triggering people. They're saying, what do you mean a sacrifice of a buffalo? What do you mean an ogre? We're not going to go into those details. That you have to read the entire episode to understand what that means. But I'm just saying, it's a Dala saying Satguru ke hi deho panso Bhavani nai. Again, Bhavani is used, right? And these are just two examples, but I'm just trying to show you that all throughout Sikh text, Sikh history, there's references to these goddesses, okay? Now, one thing I wanted to kind of just, as we talked about Chandi Diwar, right? This is kind of like a side thing, but it really isn't. Referring to the Amrit Sanchar, or the initiation ceremony that Guru Gobind Singh created, it says, this war ballad Chandi Diwar was a very inspiring composition, the recitation of which was also made mandatory during the initiation ceremony. It says, Tej Tejo Chandi Bhani Ho Pahol Ke Madathani, right? So here it's saying that Chandi Diwar was recited, right? It says like other things were recited as well, but Chandi Diwar was recited. And I say that because there's another episode here where it says Guru Gobind Singh proceeds to the south, and he sets up his camp with his army, and it says the Guru Singhs were heard reciting Chandi Chetar and Chandi Diwar, as well as the recitation of Guru's composition Akal Ustad, right? It said, Chope baja nagare chulhe nishan pare baniya kis kare na kaan Chandi Chetar or Chandi ki var akal ustat ke kare uchar, right? It's saying like the battle drums and the battle standards of the Khalsa were basically on display, like the drums were being beaten or sounded, and then the battle standards were unfurled. And it mentions Chandi Diwar, Chandi Chetar, Akal Ustad. A lot of people who today take exception to these banis, saying that they aren't the works of our Guru, we can see in historical texts that they were recited. Okay? Chandi Diwar is so important to us. All bani is important to us, but Chandi Diwar is one that we don't recite that much. And I implore you, start reading Chandi Diwar, especially just anybody who wants courage, bravery, protection, even if you're not a Sikh, right? There's lessons in there for all of humanity. It inspires all of humanity. But if you are particularly Khalsa Amritari, right, it is essential. Like, set it up with your friends at your universities, at your schools, where you do, once in a while, you do a Chandi Diwar recitation, right? And you learn over time how to pronounce it. I'm still learning how to pronounce it. You learn its meanings. If you can read it once a year, once every 6 months, once a month, once a week. If you put it in your Nitnem and read it every day, that's a blessing. But it's very important because it's so in every facet of our identity, it's so intertwined. And most people don't read it. So that's just me, that's just a side note imploring you to look into Chandi Divar, right? And then we see here one of the most respected Sikh sources in terms of our historical sources mention the Devi over and over again. Okay, so next we're going to go into another famous text, and this is called Suraj Prakash. Okay. Now there's two Sikhs. One is a Paivir Singh one, and one is Ajit Singh Olak, but they're very similar, and I mentioned it in a previous video, I believe. We're just going to use the Ajit Singh Olak one for today's video. I've already introduced the other ones, but this one is just like it has the poetry and then it has the translation. This is written by a very famous poet named Kavi Santokh Singh, right? Kavi Santokh Singh, considered the greatest Sikh poet, writer, historian after the Guru period by pre-colonial Sikh thought. Now, why do I bring that up? Because this is a historical text mixed with philosophy. Now, there's an incident here, or should I say incident? A historical event that people take exception to. They say it didn't happen, right? It was basically this divine goddess. It's believed that Guru Gobind Singh performed what's called a haman, also called a havan, which is a fire ceremony, and the goddess manifested in front of him as a historical happening. I'm not going to go into whether that's true, whether it wasn't true, because I'm still learning about it. But there's a whole section devoted to it. Why do I want to bring that up? Because, again, for the purpose of scholarship, Kavi Santokh Singh's work, highly respected. But again, people take exception to certain things, and that's allowed. You can have that conversation. So here at the text, we're referring to the concept of the goddess physically manifesting in front of Guru Gobind Singh, and some people say it happened, some people say it didn't happen. That's beyond the concept and scope of this video. But I just wanted to tell you that here there's a section. It says, it says Ki Devi Pragat Hoi Si Padam Pusham Pai Sahib Pai Veer Singh Ji. So the other Sikh by Pai Veer Singh, in reference to that. So here it lists all of the supporting evidence why they think that this historical event did not happen. So it mentions Bachita Natik, which is Guru Gobind Singh's autobiography. It mentions Sri Dasam Granth Sahib Ji, other Bhavani's compilation in Sri Dasam Granth Sahib Ji. It mentions Guru Sobha that we just went through by the poet Kavi Sainapat. It mentions, there's like a lot here. I'm not going to go into it. It mentions, maybe I'll read a little bit. No, I think basically I'm going to summarize it, but it's basically saying why they think that this wasn't a historical event, that Guru Gobind Singh didn't do these fire ceremonies or these and so on. I'm just saying, like, it's okay to have different opinions, and that's why I'm introducing this to you. I don't want to be accused of perhaps hiding certain stuff, right? The thing is that there's very good arguments put forward. There's Ratname, which are codes of conduct by prominent Sikhs that are introduced here. Ratnama Chopa Singh Ji, Ratnama Pai Daya Singh Ji, Ratnama Pai Prahlad Singh Ji. And basically the summary is that it says ਇਸ ਲਈ ਭਾਈ ਸੰਤੋਖ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਦੇਵੀ ਪ੍ਰਗਟ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਸਾਰਾ ਪ੍ਰਸੰਗ ਨਿਰਮੂਲ ਅਤੇ ਆਧਾਰ ਰਹਿਤ ਹੈ. Oh, and then it mentions also other granths, Prem Samarig and so on, right? So what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say, yeah, it's okay to have different discussions. But around that, I want to go into a passage that stood out to me. Why? I'll show you. It's actually in the second, not the second, the 10th volume of this. Basically what the chapter is called is called Mata Gujri Ji Nu Devi Da Prasang Sunaya, where Guru Gobind Singh basically tells his mother about what happened according to this when he basically invoked the goddess. The thing is, if you have different opinions about certain texts and stuff, that's okay, as mentioned. But people who haven't studied these texts, they're saying don't teach them, get them out, they're corrupted and so on. And in my opinion, that's not the right way to go about it. Read them, study them, have different opinions and conversations, because even if there are things in here that you personally might not agree with, there's so much knowledge here, philosophy, wisdom, there's so much knowledge. You can't just remove these. These have been in our tradition for generations, and our top scholars have been studying them for generations. So one thing is that why was it important to basically invoke the goddess or worship the goddess or praise the goddess? Ise lage aradhana taram heta tar par navara. Dasam, so that's what the text says. The translation, Dasam vaste, taram vaste Devi di aradhana, taram vaste Devi di aradhana karan taake tarti de par nu dur kariye. So to protect Dharma, Taram, and make the suffering of the world go away, it's important to evoke the goddess. Okay? That's why the goddess is seen as the one who protects Dharam. So when Dharam, or this concept of, I mean, it's hard to describe Dharam, but this concept of compassion, of righteous living, of living by certain morals and ethics, when that is threatened through, you can say, oppression, which was happening at this time, it's, she's the guardian of Dharam. She protects that. I'll quickly say there are basically, from when I've looked at the different controversies about this event, whether it was historical or not, there's basically three. There's like you could say, there's like a spectrum. Some people say that Guru Gobind Singh did these ceremonies, he believed in them wholeheartedly, and this is what happened. Some people say exactly what he said. Guru Gobind Singh didn't believe in them, this is all made up. And then there's a middle argument that says that Guru Gobind Singh performed them because he was trying to inspire and get the support of the average person who needed to know that this mission that Guru Gobind Singh had to basically destroy tyranny, it was divinely sanctioned. So you can, wherever you want to land on that spectrum is up to you. I'm just giving you the different arguments. Now, that's fine. So I'm not going to argue about whether it actually happened or not, right? I'm not going to introduce my opinion yet because I'm still learning and I'm still developing my opinion. But I wanted to introduce a passage that really stood out to me. Chali barakat tumhe pashchati binasahe turka tej bakhyati hoye tumari puran asha raj khalse hoye prakasha. This is basically what Guru Gobind Singh says was told to him by this divine entity, the goddess. Thwade jyoti jyot saman to 40 saal baad turkan da tej pragat roop vich khatam ho javega. Thwadi aas puran hovegi te Khalsa de Raj da Prakash hoega. Why did this really stand out to me? As I've mentioned previously, Guru Gobind Singh was born in affluence. Like, he lived a very, like, a safe life at the beginning. I won't say safe, but like, he had all the luxuries of the world at his disposal. As we learn more about his life later on, we see that he gave up everything. He sacrificed, like, pretty much almost his entire family, all his luxuries, worldly comforts, his armies, everything. Up to, like, even his shoes. When you go look into his life, and you can do that on your own, and Guru Prasad will go into it one day as well. Why did he do it? What we know is that other personalities in the past, kings, rulers, divine prophets, eventually their mission turned to gathering wealth, power, and status for themselves. Right? Guru Gobind Singh didn't do that. Because this passage, it says, Chali bark tumhe pash chati, बिनस हे तुर्ग तेज बख्याति होए तुम्हारी पूरन आशा राज खालसे होए प्रकाशा थोड़े ज्योति जोत समान तो 40 साल बाद. So after your light merges with the light, so basically when you leave your mortal body, 40 years after that, this Khalsa, so the rule of the Turk will be essentially destroyed. It'll be ended. And the Khalsa, or the rule of the common people, that Guru Gobind Singh empowered, will rule. This shows you Guru Gobind Singh gave up everything for the people, not for himself. That he had no ambition for worldly power and wealth. That he literally, for the common person, he sacrificed everything. You know, and you get emotional, like, thinking about this, but if you don't study these granths, you don't get this information. Some of the personalities, the attributes of the gurus, especially Guru Gobind Singh, you don't get that, right? I mean, how can I put it? Like, look what he gave up for the common person. He didn't have to. There was no need to do it, but he did it, right? Because he knew he wouldn't physically live, his physical body wouldn't be around to see the end of the Turk Empire, the Mughal Empire. But he still, for the sake of the people, gave up everything, right? That's very rare in history. And it's I mean, I don't even know how to articulate it. I'm just saying things like this you miss. For the people who haven't studied these granths and they tell us to stop learning, stop talking about them, and so on, you'll never know your own history. You'll never know your own philosophy, because so much of it is here. And you'll never really, I mean, I'm not going to go too much into it, but look how magnificent that is. That somebody who had all the safety, security, and wealth in the world gave it up, went to war, sacrificed it all, including his family, his sons, all his sons, all his children, for the common person, and the result of it, he would not be around to see. So, I lost my train of thought, but it's very powerful. And that's why it's very important to study these things, whether you believe them or not, because you do find a lot of beautiful things that you come across in a lot of philosophies. Okay. So the next thing, I wanted to comment a little bit. So there's an Eastern mind and there's a Western mind. And a lot of scholars talk about this. The Western mind, we're all westernized. Even if you grew up in Punjab, or everybody's westernized because of globalization. Our way of thinking is different now compared to traditional Eastern thinking. In traditional Eastern thinking, they include history and philosophy all in one, right? So it's very difficult for a Western mind to understand this. And so I'm trying to erase the biases that I have, or the upbringing that I have, the conditioning that I have to think like a Westerner and try to start thinking like an Easterner, or like somebody like more pre-colonial. So that's one thing I just wanted to bring into text. If you view these things through a Western mind, it's very difficult to understand them, and it's very difficult to erase that conditioning as well. Okay? So, now, do you see how my methodology works? I don't just jump to conclusions. I try to take as many sources, and there's more sources here. Like these are some sources, right? But within the sources, there's more references, and there's even more sources and more sources. Just learn everything and use sources to back up sources. Don't just think that just because somebody told you something that it's true. What is your backing up? I mentioned Sant Gyani Gurbachan Singh Ji backs up everything he says. He lists multiple sources, Amrit Kosh, Mahan Kosh, these dictionaries, other sources, and then he tells you what these words mean. So use sources, right? Don't just be like one of those like, well, like, yo, my dad said, don't do this. Like, I see that all the time. Not to make fun of anybody, I apologize, but those are the arguments that I hear. It's like, no, study, learn, go to reputable sources, right? So, okay, that being said, but people will always find an excuse. So people will say they don't believe in Sarabloh Granth Sahib. Okay, fine. They'll say they don't believe in Dasam Granth Sahib. Okay, fine. Then they'll say that they don't believe in, maybe they don't believe in Sobha. Maybe they don't believe in Panth Prakash. Then they'll say they don't believe in Suraj Prakash. Okay, so they don't believe in anything. So is there anything that you might believe in? Well, I just want to briefly talk about something in Jap Sahib, which is Guru Gobind Singh's most famous compilation of poetry. It says, Namo Lok Mata. What is the translation of that? ਤੂੰ ਜਗ ਦੇ ਸਭ ਜੀਵਾਂ ਦੀ ਮਾਤਾ ਹੈ ਭਾਵ ਤੂੰ ਹਰ ਇੱਕ ਨੂੰ ਮਾਂ ਵਾਂਗੂ ਪਿਆਰ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ right? You are the mother of the people, Namo Lok Mata, of all living beings, and you love like a mother. So why am I bringing this up? Because here is a reference to the divine being a mother. It's just that a name has been given. It's a generic Namo Lok Mata. In the other text, a name has been given to basically elaborate on this personification. But there's absolutely no reason why. Like, I don't understand why people get so upset, because this divine feminine is throughout everywhere. It's the very beginning of Jap Sahib as well, right? Now, I'm going to go into another steek. And this is the steek of Adha Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, and it's called Farid Kot Wala Tika. Now, this one is much older. I'm going to give you I've shown other ones as well in different videos. What is the history of this? So this one tends to be preferred by pre-colonial Sikhs. The history of this is that, I'm just going to read it. Now, one thing, just so you know, if you have the version that I have, it's very difficult to read it. Just the way it's printed. There's parts where like I need a magnifying glass. So that's a disclaimer, right? So what's the history of this steek? So basically it says here, I'm paraphrasing, I'll read it here, but it says, Dr. Turam Sahib, एक जर्मन विद्वान ने कलम उठा के एक अशुद्ध टीका प्रस्ती राही प्रगट कीता जिसने एक शुद्ध टीके दी खिच लोकां विच पैदा कर दिती. So there was a German historian, philosopher, whatever, his name was Trump, right? And I just want to say one thing. We talk about the difference between Eastern writing and thought and Western. A Westerner would have just said a German named Trump wrote an incorrect translation. But here, I can't even translate this into English. It's so beautiful. It's basically he picked up his pen and revealed like a incorrect tika. Like, I don't know, it's just beautiful the way they put this. It's like the simplest things, they turn it into beautiful poetic measures, right? So basically this guy Trump, basically a German scholar, basically created a translation interpretation that was incorrect, right? And then what happened was the people, they, because of that, they had a desire for a correct translation. Okay, so it says here, this was undertaken, it says Bikrama Singh Ji. Now here it could be Bikram, but they wrote Bikrama like with a little bit of a pencil. Bikrama Singh Ji Bahadur Alia was basically the king or the ruler of a place called Faridkot, right? And in his heart, he developed this desire to do this seva, this selfless service of basically putting the resources together to have a clear, correct translation of Guru Granth Sahib, the principal six scriptures. Then it says, "Es vichar par pai Badan Singh Ji Gyani Sevakhan Waliyan to Shubh Kaj Samat." So basically, this was undertaken by Badan Singh Ji, right? And basically what happened was, so here it says it started in 1934 and finished in 1940. Now I made a mistake previously. That's not the English calendar, the Western calendar. That's probably the Bikram, or like the Punjabi calendar. So from my understanding, if we translate that into Western, it's around the 1870s, something like that. But somebody can correct me on that, but I'm not exactly sure. But you're looking at like around the 1870s was when this I guess this mission to create a Guru Granth Sahib Ji translation and interpretation started. Okay, so look that up independently, but I don't exactly know that. I could be wrong on that, but 1870s, I believe it is. 1860s, 1870s, 1880s kind of area. Okay, and Badan Singh was the one who was given that task. Then it says basically after that, to basically correct it, Baba Sumer Singh Ji Mahant Takat Sri Patna Sahib. So Baba Sumer Singh, who name we had mentioned in Sarabloh Granth Sahib, I believe it's the same one. He was like the head priest of Patna Sahib, which is one of the Sikh historical institutions. He created a committee, and the committee had 8 people on it, highly respected, very well-known scholars, and then they edited it, right? Then why am I saying all this? Because it says Jis Tarah Bhai Badan Singh Ji Gyani Nu Maharaja Sahib Wallow Tika Karan Di Seva Same Tan Padarat Dwara Sanmanat Kita Gya. So when this was being created, and it took immense effort, Badan Singh was basically given all the provisions that he needed to work on this, in terms of like money and resources and so on. And then it goes on and on and on, and then basically it says, but the thing is that the king Bikrama Singh Ji basically left his body or passed away before his desire was completed, meaning before the translation was completed, and then his successors took on that service. And it also says that Bikrama Singh Ji, also the committee that was formed afterwards to edit it, to make sure that it was like very high quality, reputable, he provided all the resources and wealth to those scholars. Now, why do I say that? I wanted to bring that to people's attention because it's very important to financially support your scholars. There's this thing going around saying that if somebody's doing seva, it should be free. They should, and certain sevas, of course, I agree with that, but we have a history in the Sikh tradition where people were paid to do kirtan, or they were supported financially for scholarship or for teaching martial arts and things like that. That's pretty much been lost, almost, not, I won't say completely, but it's significantly declined. And that's why we're in such a tough situation right now, because much of our knowledge, our expertise, where once we were the best at pretty much everything, the highest quality scholars who spoke multiple languages, were familiar with multiple philosophies and traditions, right? That's been eroded, right? Our kirtanis, our devotional singers, right? Their skill level on a macro level has declined, right? Our martial arts traditions have every single thing, because now to be a high level teacher, you have to think to yourself, okay, how am I going to study my craft and become very high level so that I can teach others if I don't have any resources to feed myself or feed my family? So I've listened to other scholars, like very high level scholars, talk about scholars that they know who are of immense level, right? Next level knowledge, but they don't even have money to buy clothes. Like their clothes, they wear like torn clothes, and they don't have money for food, anything like that, right? So this is one thing I wanted to bring to your attention. If we support our teachers, right, then they can become better, and then they can focus on teaching, and then our entire tradition can go back to its former glory. So two of my teachers, and I'm not a very good student, but so I'm not going to mention their names because I don't want to embarrass them with my level of being not the best student. My teachers are supported by their students, and they focus completely on what they're doing, right? Whether it is teaching the meanings of Gurbani and pronunciation, or teaching martial arts, or teaching something else, right? So that's why I wanted to bring that to your attention. Also, it filters out the people that are not very knowledgeable, right? Sort of, to an extent. I shouldn't say that, but you do find a lot of people that kind of like, you can see they haven't put in a lot of effort, right? I'm one of them. I need to put in more effort for sure. But there's a lot of people that collect a lot of money, and the results or the product that is tends not to be up to par. So that's why I'm trying to say, to bring back our tradition. You know, support your kirtanis or your devotional hymn singers so that they can become more skilled, and your teachers that teach Gurbani, support them, and your martial arts teachers and stuff like that, so that we can go back to this very high level, being like, you know, the apex of knowledge, of music, of martial arts that we once were at. Okay, so that's being said, I'm just throwing in like some different ideas and stuff. I'm not going to go too much into this because we're going to save this for another video. This video is already quite lengthy, but a very famous passage that most people from the Sikh tradition know, Eka Mai Jogat Vyai Tin Chele Parvano, right? And I won't read the entire translation, but it basically says there's well, it's kind of, I think the writing is a little blurred out there. एक जो अकाल मूर्त परमात्मा है वह जब माई माया साथ जुगत. So basically, this is a reference to the concept of Maya, which is exactly the same as what we talked about in Chandi with the Khanda, right? Of Maya being created, which is similar to when we talked about at the beginning. Maya Lachmi is different than Maya, right? At a base understanding, right? At the highest understanding, everything is the same, right? I'm not going to go so much into this, but I just wanted to introduce this tika, and I wanted to say that even in Japji Sahib, Divine Feminine, iconography and divine feminine references are even at the very beginning in Japji Sahib, which is where this is from. Guru Prasad, I will elaborate on that passage in the future as my knowledge increases, Guru Prasad if it does, and we can learn together. But like I said, I just want to introduce this to you, that everything supports everything. Japji Sahib supports Chandi Diwar, right? So the beginning of Japji Sahib is the same philosophy as the beginning of Chandi Diwar, right? And Chandi Diwar is the same as Sarabloh Granth Sahib. And the references in Sarabloh Granth Sahib, Dasam Granth Sahib, and Guru Granth Sahib, we find those in history as well, in our Granths, our historical sources, as well as people who came to Punjab and observed us. So everything matches, right? So when people say that the divine goddess concept is alien to us, that it was infiltrated, well, then that means we have nothing, that everything was infiltrated. Or it just means, perhaps, that what we've been taught is incorrect, right? Because if this permeates our entire tradition, this Devi, this goddess, and we see that it's so important to our psyche, to our identity, to the way we worship, then maybe our interpretations over the past few generations have been corrupted. And that's where we need to look at, right? Finally, I do want to say, of course, like I said many, many times, I'm still learning, I'm trying my best, and I want you to come on this journey and learn with me as well. And in future videos, each reference that I made, I'll make an entire video on that, but it does take a long time to go through all this material, of course, and I'm not very fancy, so I do apologize for that. But in ending, I just want to say, get into the material, right? Even if it's like slow, just start getting into our pre-colonial Sikh interpretations, our pre-colonial Sikh history, and really connect with our history, our philosophy, our faith in every single way, and do it based on your capability, right? Right? Other people, certain people can do it, you know, devote more time. Other people, like myself, I have a job, like a full-time job, so I try my best whenever I have some time to get into this. If you're younger, maybe you have more time, you know, your summers off, I'm not sure if you're in school. So just make an effort. That's what I'm trying to say. Other than that, I do apologize for any misinterpretations, mispronunciations, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you continue to walk on this path and acquire more knowledge of Guru Prasad. Thank you. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.